Right then, welcome to my spoiler review of 2018's Tomb Raider, the return of Lara Croft, or should we say, kind of a reboot basically. Now this follows the more newer games and is a step away from the older iteration of Lara Croft, which can be seen as good and can be seen as bad. First and foremost, I'll say straight off the bat whether I enjoyed this movie or not. I did not. I do not think it's a good film, and I will obviously list those reasons, but from the outset, it's not really worth venturing to the theatre to go and watch, especially not on a big screen, and that links into why I don't like it. Because on the big screen, it's really telling why it's not a good movie. First and foremost, the kind of characterization of Lara Croft and the tone of this movie is all over the place. There are some really strange decisions with the characterization. She is obviously heir to the Croft throne, millions and millions of pounds, one can presume, loads and loads of businesses, the world at her disposal, and because she believes her father is not dead, she does not want to accept all that money, so she's basically living the life of a bike courier. And in that's not so bad, but there's some really strange decisions around that story. We see some bizarre chase, as if they're on motorbikes and they're chasing her for paint, and it's super, super weird. It'll make sense when you watch it, but it's so, so strange. And that whole opening kind of scene setting and character building was very, very bizarre. And that kind of sets the tone up for later down the line. And by that I mean it's just all over the place. There are moments of levity, moments of serious tenderness, and it's almost as if the movie just does not have a clear direction on what tone it's trying to be, whether it is trying to be serious or whether it is trying to be a bit tongue-in-cheek. And that was quite distracting. Secondly, the effects on this film are bad. I could not find the budget for this movie, but if it was not made for around $50 million, then it's unacceptable. Because, say, let's take Deadpool for instance, was made for $58 million, and the visual effects were superb on that movie. This film has some of the worst visual effects I've seen on what would be considered a big budget movie for a really, really long time. Some strange decisions on kind of open air shots, bird's eye view as it comes through the trees. I'm aware that Alicia Vikander did her own stunts for this movie. That is amazing, but it all falls flat when you're watching the film and the visual effects which are implanted around those real life stunts look appalling, and it detracts from what you're actually watching to the point where you don't believe she's doing these things, which is a massive shame. And this kind of goes into the Mummy territory. We saw the Mummy last year with Tom Cruise, who obviously always does his own stunts, and you couldn't tell he was doing them. And it's the same thing with this. You can't see that Alicia Vikander is doing these stunts because it's so bad in terms of the visual effects which are added and the green screen and obviously the sound stages that they were using. Horrendous. Outside of that, the lighting on this movie is really bad, and it's on some shots it is so blown out and oversaturated it's almost painful to watch. But not only that, would be okay if they stuck to that, but they didn't. There's some natural lighting blended in there in other scenes. Then there's some weird sepia tone shots in flashbacks, and again just dim lighting to show some weird emotions here and there. Essentially, and I know it sounds like I'm all over the place in terms of my description here, but that was how bad the movie was. The lighting was just all over the show, and it really detracted from what you were watching, to the point where you're looking at people's faces going, what is this? The light shining off people's faces versus what they're seeing, it was just all over the place. A real shame. In terms of the story, because again, you can kind of overlook a lot of these things when you're engaged in the story, but the story was just really off. And I've seen other people's reviews of this movie. I don't normally do that, but I wanted to with this one because in particular this is a video game adaptation, and a lot of people would have been quite keen on it just on that basis, and it seemed that they were. It seemed that they were very forgiving of the story because of that, and I don't agree with that summation at all. The story was really not particularly that great, to be perfectly honest. So the story is essentially she finds a mystery. She goes to an island and solves the mystery. Her dad dies in the process. Loads of other people die. And she's badass Lara Croft. But in kind of the steps how it gets there, and tone and the characterization of Lara Croft is just way off. And I know this is probably more linked to the game, how she becomes Lara Croft, she becomes the Tomb Raider. But for me, and I'm sure many other people will probably agree with this, is that this is a property to succeed. It doesn't actually have to follow a game. You can do a video game adaptation of this property, but you don't have to follow a game to the T. And I think this is where the downfall is on this movie, is that they followed the game pretty much to the letter, as far as I'm aware. Tomb Raider is a property which can transfer into a movie really easily. It's just an action-adventure film. They're so rife and common in Hollywood in this day and age. I fail to see how they didn't decide to approach it in that manner, as opposed to just copying the game. But hey, aside from that, were there some good things to this movie? Absolutely. It had such a great cast. Walton Goggins is an awesome actor, and it's really good to see him in some stuff. Alicia Vikander, awesome actress. Unfortunately, I'm not sure how she's going to live this movie down, to be perfectly honest, especially because this is her first really starring and leading role, and it really was not that good. You know, and then you've even got the likes of Dominic West, Kristen Scott, all really, really good actors, but so underutilized in this film with really cheesy dialogue which you could actually guess before it even came out of their mouths, and that was the real shame. However, like I say, that is the pro, is that they had an awesome cast for this film. But I would be interested to see kind of how this budget was utilized and how much they actually had to play with. It's very common for video game adaptations into movies to not get a massive budget, which makes sense because they don't normally do very well at the box office. However, if this movie wasn't made for anything under $50 million or $58 million, then really it's quite unacceptable how that movie looked. Decisions in the lighting and kind of technical aspect which could have been really avoided to make this a much better looking film. Visually, it's just off, and there's some really poor effects. There's even, and I know I'm digressing a little bit, but it just popped into my head and I need to say it. There's some scenes where they're clearly walking through a forest, and they're on location at a forest, but the depth of field on the camera makes it look like they're on a green screen. But they are there, but it looks like they're on a green screen. And again, those kind of decisions could have easily been changed and avoided, and that mistake wouldn't have happened. So it's really interesting to kind of dissect this movie and kind of see why it happened and how it happened like this. But I digress. I want to ask you guys what you think of this film. I posted my initial reaction on Twitter, and a lot of people tended to agree with what I was saying. So what did you guys think of this film? If you've seen it, please do let me know down below in the comment section. Let me know if you share any of the points which I've kind of pointed out here. I know a lot of people will probably tout and say, hey, look, Mr. H, you didn't play the game, you've not got a leg to stand on here. Well, I do. At the end of the day, this movie should stand up just as a movie, and unfortunately, in my opinion, it just didn't. It was, again, technical decisions to one side. The story just fell flat, and the tone was all over the place. It had potential, but they didn't utilize all of the potential, unfortunately. So guys, please do let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you do not follow me on Twitter, please do. This is not me just begging for Twitter followers. There's a reason. YouTube is not sending my videos to your subscription feed. They're not notifying you of my videos. Apparently, it's a well-known issue on YouTube right now. So if you do follow me on Twitter, the moment I release a video, it gets pushed over to Twitter. So you will be notified and you'll be able to watch it straight away. So please do follow me on Twitter over at Mr. H Reviews if you don't already. Hit me a follow on Instagram as well if you want to see what I'm up to in my day-to-day life. And as always, guys, I've been Mr. H. Until next time, I will catch you in the comment section.